Let's do this.
Sure. All right, guys. Welcome to the seventh week of Tabletop Meetup here in Altspace. As Brian mentioned, we've been doing this for almost 2 months now. This week, we're going to be, as usual, doing a quick group discussion, and then we'll play some games. We got a couple options for what we can do tonight, and I'll go through that in a bit. But tonight's topic is going to be CCGs, so collectible card games, miniatures, and war games, which I think of as being like the lifestyle type games. And you guys can let me know what you think about that and any experiences you've had. So after we do that, I'm thinking that we can either hang in Altspace and we can play one of our favorites here, whether it be Love Letter, which we've got loaded up here, or any of the other games that we have available to us. We could even break into different rooms and play games. We don't all have to be in the same place. Or alternatively, those who do have Tabletop Simulator, we could go out and do that. We actually did that, believe it or not, for the first time this weekend, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. One announcement to get out of the way. This is being streamed by our friend Ghoster here to the Hive. He's recording this. It will be, actually right now, people are watching us on YouTube. You'll be able to go watch this later, or you can catch up on previous meetups where we talked about board games and card games and RPGs and all sorts of different topics. Thanks to Ghoster for streaming it. Thanks to Vivian for putting together the Hive. And you should go check out the Hive channel that she runs on YouTube. It's called the Hive VR, and it has Vivian's show on there, as well as my program and a bunch of other, the book club. I believe Mike's new show, which I think the first episode is going to be this Sunday night. An announcement. It's called The Vault. It's a financial planning show. You guys should go check that out too, because it's a really cool show. He's been spending a lot of time and effort putting it together. So go check out The Vault. Okay, so the 20-second version of what I'm trying to do with this group. I want gamers to get together, tabletop gamers of all sorts of different types here in Altspace. And have a place that they can play the types of games that they like, whether it's here in Altspace or in Tabletop Simulator or somewhere else. So here's just a picture of me and some of my friends in Altspace playing a game that's not quite out yet. We have so much fun. I just wanted to share that with other people and give the larger community a space to get together and play tabletop games. So what game were we playing down in the corner there? Well, the cool new announcement is, we all love Love Letter and Boss Monster. And, I know some people are really into Holograms Against Humanity. Some of the other classic games that we have here in Altspace. But there's a new game coming out called Secret Caesar, which is, in my opinion, going to be the best game we have here. It's just an amazing game. I've played so many rounds of it during testing and have just loved it. I don't know. I think I've probably played the thing like 50, 60 times at this point. I'm not sick of it at all. And I can't wait to play it with everybody in here and everybody in Altspace, because it's just amazing social deduction game. Steven from AltspaceVR made the app. And it's just about ready for public consumption. And I really can't wait to announce to the community here when it is ready and we can all play it together soon. So just a review of different things we've been talking about. So tonight is the end of my 4-part series of what I'm calling the pillars of tabletop. And what I mean by that are the game types that, in my opinion, are what props up the tabletop hobby, and the different types of games that really kind of build the community and keep it going. We talked about board games first, because I love board games. It's kind of my thing. From there, we went into card games, and then RPGs, which was actually what we talked about the last time we met at 9 o'clock 2 weeks ago. Last week we had a brief diversion. With spooky games for Halloween. Today we're going to wrap it up with the money makers, and we'll talk about that. Next week I'm taking the week off. I need a break after all these sessions, and I'm going to kind of prepare so that I don't have to really think about this during the Thanksgiving holiday. Since I'll be traveling and doing some other stuff. But the week of Thanksgiving, I'll be queuing up. We're going to have a special event, actually. And I believe this is going to be actually somewhat in cooperation with Altspace. It's not 100% confirmed yet, but it's looking that way. We're going to have a special program where there's potentially going to be a larger group and some new users. And hopefully some of you can come to that as well. And then the really exciting one is at the end of the month, I heard Brian talking about Boss Monster playing last night. Leah ran a game night. I wasn't able to make it, and I'm really disappointed about that. But Chris O'Neill, who's the designer of Boss Monster and who actually is an AltSpace user, who has run events in the past here, he's going to come here for a special event where we're going to talk about Kickstarter and how that really has had a really positive influence on tabletop gaming, and particularly for games like Boss Monster that probably wouldn't exist without Kickstarter, because it's really kind of a product that's quite different than what people are typically used to, and it's really great for him to be able to take his product directly to the customer and get it nice wide exposure. So that'll be a really exciting one. So I hope a lot of you will come back for that. A few more announcements. I have a Board Game Geek Guild for people who are members of this group. Screenshot this if you want to join it. Now, you're welcome to join this, but it hasn't been as active as the second thing that we recently started, which is the Discord chat, which has been very successful. Guest, can I ask you to get away from the screen, please? Yeah, thank you. The Discord, I'm sorry?
Oh, nothing.
Okay.
He was just wondering how to screenshot.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So if anybody wants to take a screenshot, just go into, there's like a cluster menu that's to the bottom left. If you look kind of like at, I don't know, let's call it, what is that, like 7 o'clock?
How do you do it if you have Gear VR?
I don't know. I think the same way, but are there any Gear users? So
It's.
I got it.
Okay, yeah. So click on that, and then you need to. It'll start in selfie mode. You have to hit the thing that has like the arrows and make it spin around. And if you click on that, that'll give you a forward-facing camera, and then you can take a screenshot. And this is the Discord link. So if you click on this is an open invite, so anybody can join this. And as you can see, it's there's already some active conversation in there. And the coolest thing, we've already used this to gather games outside of AltSpace. So we're playing games not just here now, but we're starting to play games in other applications, in virtual reality. So this is the place for us to organize that. So I'll give everybody a second. Just make sure you get a screenshot of this so that you can go off and join it. Hopefully this will be the last week we have to do it low tech with screenshots. I'm trying to learn how to put links that'll open up the browser for you automatically, but for now, screenshots the best option. So anyway, if you want me to give this link to you later, just let me know, because I need to move on. So as I mentioned, we went into Tabletop Simulator this Sunday for a few hours, and a bunch of us, it was more exploratory. We didn't actually finish any games, but we kind of played around, and some folks were able to familiarize themselves with the control scheme. And it was really a cool session. I think everybody had a really good time, and I can't wait for the next one. So potentially that could be tonight. We'll talk about it after we get done. We can decide. Some people might want to stay here and play games. Some people might want to go off and give Tabletop Simulator a try. We can decide once we get to the end of tonight's presentation.
I have a question.
Yes, I'm sorry,
Is
Cody.
Tabletop Simulator on Gear VR yet?
It is not. So Tabletop Simulator is a PC application. Now, you don't have to use PC VR. You can also just use a regular PC where you play it in 2D mode.
Okay, so, thank you for telling me that.
Sure, it's Steam. So stuff is last and I'm grouping a bunch of games together. I'm calling them lifestyle games, and I'll explain what I mean by that. But specifically, I'm going to talk about 3 things: collectible card games like Magic the Gathering, miniatures games like Warhammer, and war games like Advanced Squad Leader, ASL. So 3 kind of separate game types that have some common elements. So I just kind of lumped them into the miscellaneous category for the last one of these things. So what am I talking about? Lifestyle games. It sounds ridiculous. What do I mean by that? If you're familiar with it, what I basically mean is it's a game that is more than just something you do every now and then. And it's not a situation where, you play one game and then play a different game the next. It's actually a part of your lifestyle. It's something that you've adopted as a lifestyle activity. And in that type of game, you see often that they have like a life outside of when you sit down to play it with someone else. So, you might be collecting things like in Pokemon, right? You collect cards that you then take and build a deck out of and use. It's called construction. So the idea of collection and construction are common elements in lifestyle games. The metagame, what's called the metagame, is often as important as the game itself. So the idea of the decisions that you make and the story that happens between gaming sessions is at least as important, and in some games, like Magic the Gathering, is probably more important than playing the game itself. When you play Magic, if you have a good deck, way better than your opponent, you might beat an opponent who understands the game way better than you, because you've essentially out-metagamed them by basically the cards that you have available to you. And a lot of times they're kind of individual things where maybe you're playing them in a tournament or an organized play type event with other people. And the last thing, and the reason these games are very important, is these are a game store's best friend. Lifestyle games like Magic the Gathering and Warhammer account for the largest portion of the games industry by financials, by profit. So board games are getting really popular, but they're still insignificant in comparison to the amount of money a product like Magic or Warhammer brings in. So they're super important to the hobby because they're basically what keeps the hobby's world turning and keeps the lights on in the hobby. So the first one I'm going to talk about are collectible card games. So obviously the most recognizable one is Magic the Gathering. Magic came out in 1993. It started an explosion of collectible card games in the 90s. We saw them die off as the 90s wore on into the 2000s, but there's a bit of a resurgence today. Although there's only a couple really successful collectible card game products, Magic being one of them. Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! Are pretty much the big three.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Sucks!
Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a love it or hate it game. I have no opinion, but I know there's as many people who love it as who hate it. There are some more niche collectible card game products, like one I'm going to talk about in a second here. And Force of Will is another one, which is kind of like an anime version of Magic the Gathering with some pretty crazy art and some pretty crazy concepts. But in addition to CCGs, within the last 5 to 7 years, a new concept has been developed, which are called LCGs and ECGs. So living card games or extensible card games. So these are games that use a CCG-like model where you can buy additional content and add them to your game, but there's no randomness. So essentially, you're buying entire new decks that you can add to your game without having to worry about rares and super rares and commons and the idea of random distributions of product. It's kind of a great concept, and actually some of the old CCGs have been converted to the LCG or ECG format. A big one is Android Netrunner, which is based on an old game. It's another Richard Garfield design. So Richard Garfield designed Magic. He also designed another CCG in the 90s called Android, excuse me. And Android has since been developed into an LCG called Android Netrunner, and it's been a super successful LCG, probably the most successful LCG. So anyway,
Never heard of it.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't have, Cody, because it doesn't seem like it seems like the products that you follow are not so much like in kind of like the Fantasy Flight board game market, which is definitely what it's more specific to. But it's a cool game. I've played it. So anyway, does anybody want to talk about a favorite collectible card game they have? Maybe any of the ones I've already talked about, or a different one. Brian.
Yeah, I play Marvel Puzzle Quest, which is a collectible card game you play on your computer.
Oh, cool! I didn't realize that. So you actually So in that game, you like collect. What, are you collecting marbles, or are there actually
Well,
like a card? Yeah.
each of the cards is a hero or a villain, and they all have different abilities. And gameplay is through the match 3 system, like Candy Crush, but still, some of the characters are more rare than others, and they have better abilities. So you just start out with low-level characters, keep playing, and eventually you get the cards you need to have a real, quote, killer deck.
That's cool. I didn't realize that game had that in it.
Yeah.
And that brings up a really good point, Brian, that I wanted to bring into the conversation. That I think CCG mechanics and the idea of like rarity and the concepts of building a deck or building a group of resources has really spread throughout all sorts of different types of gaming. And you brought up a good example of a digital game, and that's far from the only digital game. Has anybody ever played Hearthstone? Right? Yeah.
Yep.
I've heard of it.
I do
So-
play Hearthstone.
Yeah, so Hearthstone is basically a CCG, but it's in electronic format, right? So, and none of that would have existed without Magic and all the other CCG products. Anybody else have anything they want to add to the conversation about CCGs?
How about
I guess
basketball?
Clash Royale should be mentioned.
So I heard two different
It's
things. So,
technically- yeah,
Well, I was gonna
So
say,
Fareed,
I played
technically
Clash
card
Royale,
game.
Fareed, yeah,
Yeah.
what did you say?
Clash Royale, technically you collect cards, yeah, and it's strategy game. It's kind of action strategy and it's very mobile, but it's still card game, I guess. It qualifies.
Cool. So it's another mobile phone game where you.
Yeah, I guess it's fair to say it's the most popular currently mobile
Okay.
game, well, competitive mobile game. So
I see.
yeah.
Cool.
I
I think I heard
Of
some
course,
other
it's-
comments over
it's
here.
very, pay to win. Like if you get the rare cards, you
Yeah.
get it. But
So Fareed has also introduced another important concept to CCGs, pay to win, right? Like, so not only is the metagame important a lot of times in these games, investment can be really important in these games. So, being willing to either dedicate time or money, and usually money is a lot quicker than time. Yeah, great point. Thank you. I think Kenneth and some other folks may have had some contributions over here.
It's okay. He just said what I was supposed to say.
Oh, okay. Anything else anybody would like to add before we move on to the next question? No? Okay. Does anybody play any LCGs or ECGs?
I play Pokemon.
Okay, Pokemon, so a CCG. Awesome. So are you actively playing the late? I think some new decks are just about to come out, right? Didn't they just have a
Yeah, they
release?
just came out like yesterday.
Yeah, I thought so. Cool. Have you
Crimson
bought any packs?
Invasion.
Have you bought any
Not
packs
yet.
yet, or no?
Not yet.
Okay,
Not yet.
cool. So Cody, what are your favorite Pokemon?
Well, Bulbasaur, one of my favorites.
Uh-huh.
Squirtle, Mudkip, Trico, and that's pretty much it.
Cool. That's
I
awesome.
guess
Does
I
anybody play
should mention
Pokemon Go?
I do.
Ha!
Yeah.
I still do. I still
I think
do.
everybody does. So.
Yeah. I don't think anybody can resist that, right? And that certainly wouldn't exist without the concept of CCGs, because I mean the whole idea is I think builds upon that maybe even more than the original Pokemon handheld games from like the Game Boy, which actually came out after Magic the Gathering, and it's hard to say how influential Magic was on Pokemon the video game. I definitely think there's some cross-pollination that occurred there. So anyway, back to LCG ECGs. Both me and my girlfriend April, who often comes to these things, a Teal Robot, she's not here tonight. We love a game called Mage Wars. And I just want to talk about it real quick because I think it's a game that nobody knows about for the most part, but it's amazing. So just picture Magic the Gathering if you had a board and you had a spatial element, right? So you've got two summoners going off against each other, summoning monsters, but the monsters inhabit an arena where they actually move around and do stuff. And it almost feels like a cardboard version of Final Fantasy Tactics. Has anybody ever played that like classic 90s tactical RPG? No? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Cody's played it. Yeah, so it's an amazing game. But anyway, my answer to my favorite CCG is Dice Masters, which is kind of cheating because it's not just a CCG, it's actually a collectible dice game as well, which I love because you open up packs and not only do you get cards in there that you use, but you get dice. And while you're playing the game, you're getting different dice and you're rolling the dice and you're using the dice to buy other dice. And the coolest thing about this game, in my opinion, is it has multiple different themes. So like right here, me and April are playing the DC Comics version. So like, in front of me here, I've got like the Justice League, right? Like, so I've got like Wonder Woman, the Flash, Green Lantern, and Superman. And then she's got some of the villains, I think, from the DC universe. There's also Marvel that you can mix with it. But the coolest thing is it also has the Dungeons and Dragons theme. So basically, you can build teams where like you've got like Superman, Green Arrow, and like a Ruby Dragon or something like that, or excuse me, a Red Dragon. So it's just like a really cool like mishmash of themes, and it's just like a ton of fun. All right, second type of lifestyle game I'm going to talk about are war games. So war games are not often like a collectible type format. In fact, I can't think of any other than HeroClix that is. But the basic idea is you've got various factions competing on a map for superiority, right? It grew out of actually some of the oldest types of board games like chess and Go, right? Those are actually representations, very abstract representations of battle. We tend to forget that. In the 60s, people got really crazy and they decided to make really sophisticated simulations of war where things became increasingly statistical based. And you started rolling all these crazy dice and you had formulas that basically told you the result of the combat. And out of that, we got classic wargaming. Out of wargaming has grown almost all types of games that exist today, with the exception probably of like Euro games. But pretty much all the American style gaming descends from war games on some level, especially things like RPGs and miniatures games, which we're about to talk about in a second here. But basically, war games are one of the hardest, most hardcore forms of gaming. When you go to any gaming convention, there's always a few guys who are off in the corner who all they do is they play the same war game the entire time they're at the con. That's the reason I call it a lifestyle game, because basically, if you're a war gamer, that's all you do. And then you laugh at all the kids playing their Catan or whatever. War games are very much a niche product. So has anybody here ever played a conventional war game? Okay, Brian has. Okay, let's hear about it, sir.
Yeah, I've played a few, and I've made a few of the modules for Vassal.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I have.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, so you work with the Vassal engine? I didn't realize that. That's really cool.
Yeah, I've made like 100 different modules. Look up Brian 4482. I think I'm on Vassal, and that's me.
Oh, cool. So are you predominantly a war gamer then, Brian, or
I used to be. You need to find the right person to play with, and it's hard to find people on the internet. So I've gone to Marble Puzzle Quest where it's just me and the computer.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's great.
All. Yeah.
What was your favorite war game back in the day?
Well, Gettysburg, by Avalon Hill. They've remade it quite a few times.
Uh-huh.
But
very cool.
Yeah.
Quick question.
It looks like you have something to add.
Speaking of chess and Go, are you guys going to include that as well, or is that something else?
Yes.
Yeah?
So Brian, so not tonight. This is pretty much the only consideration we're going to talk about those types of games. But Brian who actually was just talking about war games, brought up a really good point 2 weeks ago. That one thing we haven't talked very much about yet are abstract strategy games, right? So we need to have a night, I think, where we just talk about that family of games because it's so broad. So it's an oversight, and I think that it'll be definitely on the agenda for December. We'll go through abstract strategy games, so we can talk about chess and Go. But I mean,
Cool.
you can if there's anything you would add tonight, I mean, certainly you can, because chess is without question a war game. It's the
Yeah,
original war
cool.
game.
Yeah, I would love to play. If anyone wants
Yeah,
to
yeah.
play.
Yeah. Brian, looks like you have something else you'd like to say.
Yeah, one more thing. A gamer, any gamer's best friend is Board Game Geek. Sign up there. They have the history and examples of thousands, hundreds of thousands of different games. If you're not a member, sign up.
And then
Doesn't
join our
co-
Board Game Geek group.
Right, it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Anything else about war games, guys? Ghoster? Awesome. Go for it.
There we go. Just jump up on here with you. Risk. So you made me think of the game
Yeah.
of Risk. That's one of my favorite ones that I always love to play, where you basically start out with these little tiny armies and these little tiny continents spread out all over the world, and then you develop your stronghold. You reinforce your borders, make tactical decisions about who to attack, why to attack, when to attack. Use your troop bonuses and all that fun stuff.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely played many a game of Risk.
How many times have you won?
Never. I've never won
Oh,
Risk.
come
I'm
on.
terrible at it. I think Risk is a test of endurance, right? Like, I mean, you really have to focus for a really long time in that game. I struggle. Cool. Thanks, Ghoster. And actually, what you said is a really, it's making me feel silly, right? I was just saying that, I feel like war games. There's not much of a link between war games and Euro games. I think Risk is a big place where the American style war game really found its way into modern day area control Euro games. So I do think there is a link there that I just wasn't thinking of. So thank you for bringing up Risk. That's an important link. Okay, well, we're talking a lot about war games. I thought we would talk the least about war games, so this is awesome. Anything else, guys? War games? Matt.
Axis and the Allies.
Oh yeah, now we're talking.
Played the hell
so
out of that
Axis,
when I was a kid.
yeah. Did you see the new version?
No, I gotta check it. We should play it together.
It came out last week. There's
really?
finally 3 Axis nations now. So
Nice.
they added Italy to it, so you can play 3-on-3 now.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, I want it so badly, but I don't know who the hell I'm ever going to play it with. But...
If I'm ever in the New York area, you and me, we're playing.
Yeah. That's awesome. Anything you want to say about Axis and Allies, or
Well,
just kind of?
It's got a similar feel to Risk, but you get the different units instead of just like sheer numbers. You have like the tanks and the planes and the bombers, and then the technology, and that's a little bit more. It's like Risk plus. I don't know. Maybe that's an insult to Risk because Risk has got a lot of fanboys because it's it's the original like world dominance. But I don't know. I get a Risk feel, but a little bit more like the complexity that I enjoy without going bonkers,
Right. Yeah, the rule set is pretty crazy to that, like all the little things that are going on. I have a lot of happy memories of playing Axis and Allies in grad school. Like right before Euro games became a thing, we were playing a lot of Axis and Allies, I remember. So like once Catan came out and I saw how elegant it was, like I kind of lost my taste for like all the rules of Axis and Allies. But I find myself missing that now. I really want to get back to that kind of game for sure. Cool. All right, so I think I'm going to move on just because we've got one more really important type of game to get through, and that is a subset of, well, it grew out of a subset of war games, the miniatures game. So this is kind of like taking a war game and prettying it up and making it super fancy, and adding like all these crazy, painted plastic miniatures to kind of just make it a little bit more immersive and, let's be honest, a little bit more toy-like. I'm not gonna lie, part of the reason I like playing miniatures games is because I like moving the things around the table, and kind of, just kind of the experience of playing with my toys on some level. I'll admit to it. And the first really big miniatures game, certainly not the first one, but the one that really just blew the market open for these games was Warhammer. I think it came out in 1983 by the Games Workshop, which is an English game company. And miniatures gaming has a long history in the UK. We have it in the States as well. It's all over the world, but I think of the UK as being the center of miniatures gaming. And since then, they've introduced their sci-fi theme, the Warhammer 40K theme. And since there's things like sports games, like probably the biggest miniatures game right now in the last like 2 years is this game called Guild Ball, which is, it's like you have a team of like almost like mages and fighters that are forming sport teams that have like different like factions. Like you've got like a team of like mystical fishermen and a team of like mystical carpenters and stuff that are based around different professions that like face off against each other. Yes, could I ask you to get away from the screen? Thank you. But they're basically playing soccer at the same time, while they're casting spells and fighting each other. It's pretty cool. Similar to like games like Blood Bowl or there's another one called Chaos Ball by Cool Mini or Not. And the last thing about miniatures games I just wanted to mention is, like I said, that's that toy factor, the fact that you get to play and paint and just have fun with all this cool stuff on the table. It's a big part of the experience. Does anybody have any experiences they want to talk about? Actually, let me do mine first. So, never mind. That was for the war game. So, do anybody here play any miniatures games? Any Warhammer players here? Anybody with experience?
Yeah, I play Warhammer 40K.
Awesome. Anything you want to mention about 40K? I mean, why is that your game of choice?
I guess I would say I love the vehicles. I love building them and painting them.
That's really impressive. Like I'm always amazed when I watch the Warhammer, the 40K players at the store paint up a vehicle, because it takes so much paint, right? Like I'm used to painting these little things, like, and they're just like laying down like a paint on something that's like this size. Like I'm used to painting these little goblins and stuff because that's the kind of thing I'm normally painting. But yeah, that's really cool. Anybody else? Any other miniatures gamers you want to talk about their favorite game? Matt.
I used to play like the Hero Clicks right when they came out, about in like the early 2000s, and they were really fun because like my buddy and I, we would just meet up with our little boxes of miniatures. They were already painted and they had little spinny bottoms that would click. When you and we'd be like, and we'd make a terrain like on a table at a restaurant and be like, okay, what's we'd have the rules were like you could pick objects to be like your obstacles and. Like, okay, this coffee cup is something, and then this little box here, and we'd have our little tape measure. The only thing that I guess stopped me from continuing was because each individual like unit had like kind of its own subset of rules, and there was like hundreds of them, so
yeah,
it got really obnoxious memorizing them all. But we loved collecting the little figurines, but then you end up spending just a fortune just to which is typical, like any card, but expansion pack, you get 4 or 5 little miniatures and you never get the one you wanted, But I had a good time playing it, for sure. Fun memories.
You know what? I think I would love Hero Clicks because there's a lot of things that appeal to me about it. First off, there's like, DC, there's Marvel. They've got like the Ninja Turtles now. I mean, my God,
yeah.
Mixing all that stuff together and just having at it just really appeals to me. They're really cool looking. I'm a big fan of WizKids, who makes
Mhm.
HeroClix.
Oh, yeah.
I think they make great products. But I just know if I get into that, it would just be like my house would be filled with those things.
Oh yeah, and you'd have
and
to
I would
trade your house for them because it would cost you a fortune.
yeah. So I have tried to stay away from HeroClix, and it's funny too because like I don't know how many times I go to the game store, like, and I'll pick up a HeroClix, like, and something in the back of my head is telling me no, and then April, who's usually behind me, is telling me no because
Yeah, she's
like
a
I
wise
think she
woman,
is full
sir.
aware of like what's going to happen if we get into that game.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
both of us, because
Thousands
it's
of
like all our
dollars
favorite.
later.
Yeah,
And then you put it
exactly.
away, and then you're like, "Oh, I'm done." And I got a box full of thousands of dollars worth of clickers that collectibles over there.
Yeah. Oh man, collectible games. They're so
Oh,
there's like
tell me
they're so
about it.
thrilling while you're into them, but then yeah. Anybody else miniatures games? Anybody wanna talk?
I have games with miniatures
Ryan.
in them.
Yeah, the BattleTech series and Mech Warrior is along the same line. You get so many mechs in a pack, and you're always never getting the one you really want. I got into that for about a year and then had to give it up.
Same thing with Pokemon.
Yeah,
Oh,
Got to catch them all though.
yeah.
Yeah, I've been trying for years now.
You'll never catch them all. They keep breeding new ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, the dark side of all the games we're talking about today is the way that they're working us for all our money. But at the same time, I mean, I won't lie. I like the collectible element when it's kept to a reasonable level, and when I can keep it to a reasonable level. But I heard Vivian mentioning that, you know, even if you're not a miniatures gamer, I think a lot of us who aren't like hardcore miniatures gamers still own tons of miniatures because I think miniatures gaming has a huge influence on modern board games where, you know, now a game before where it would have been a series of wooden cubes or cardboard counters is now like these really cool plastic figures, right? I don't know if Vivian, do you have a favorite board game that has miniatures in it?
Oh, it's
Uses
Cyclades,
Oh, yeah.
probably. Because like my brother brought his and it had painted figures. And then when I bought one and I realized mine weren't painted, I was pretty upset. So
Yeah, Cyclades really pops. I mean, they did a great job with those figures when you paint them. It's a pretty game. I love like all the Kraken especially. It looks amazing when it's painted. Yeah. Anybody else want to get into miniatures gaming before we move to the next topic? No? Okay. Cool. So here's my answer for my favorite miniatures game. Speaking of painted, these actually come painted. That's part of the reason I kind of like this game because I am not the painter in the particular board gaming couple I'm a part of. I do paint, but like I do not paint as much as my significant other does. But I like Armada because all the ships come painted and because Star Wars, right? This game is just insanely fun. It's like
Star Wars.
it's basically a reproduction of like the epic space battles that happen like in every Star Wars film, where you've got like a bunch of X-wings flying around the Star Destroyer, blowing it up, and you've got all the other Rebel ships chasing in, and it's just so much fun. And they've added like a campaign mode now, where like you've got like a map, and like you're fighting over the galaxy as part of the Galactic Civil War between the Empire and the Rebels, like progressively between battles. Like and the outcome of one battle has repercussions on the next. It's so much fun. I got so angry with April because she blew up my Imperial Star Destroyer in the last battle, and it's going to take a long time for the Empire to recover for such a large economic loss. And I fear greatly. Luckily, Darth Vader was able to escape in an escape pod, or we would have lost our admiral. But awesome game. This game is so good that it actually motivated me to buy a larger table, because back in the day
It
when I was
sounds
playing
awesome.
it's amazing. But back in the day, I used to play on this table, and it wasn't big enough to play like the full game. So I actually bought a larger table just to play this game. That's how good it is. But Star Wars Armada, Fantasy Flight, Epic Space Battle, one of my absolute favorite games. Certainly my favorite miniatures game. I guess I'll pause now before we move on to the next the topic I was going to finish on tonight. Anybody else have any other thoughts about lifestyle games or anything that I kind of left out? What games are part of your lifestyle that I didn't mention? This is what I consider to be the lifestyle types of games. Maybe you have a different opinion on that.
I
guess I'm
sadly
right.
have no. I have a lot of games I can play solo because I have a solo lifestyle. Sadness.
Oh, okay.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, it's just like I can't always have someone to play with. So games that you can play.
Yep.
You can run through on your own, like
Sure.
like The Cure, Pandemic: The Cure. That's
Yep.
like a fun game you play on your own.
Yeah, I like playing Scythe on my own a lot. That's a great solo game.
Oh.
Yeah,
think about
and Caverna is really good solo. A lot of the Uwe Rosenberg games are really good solo. Yeah, Greg has the solo mode now. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I mean that's definitely true. That there are a lot of really cool solo games that can be a thing too. Anybody else? No. Okay, cool. That's kind of a weird
I'm
question.
trying to
anyway, so
play
I'm not-
chess in VR.
Well, okay, that's a good one. So I did not talk. We talked a little bit about chess earlier, but tournament games. So chess, Go, poker. Anything that I didn't mention is another style of lifestyle game that is worthy of mention. So thank you for bringing up chess again as another type of lifestyle
By
game.
the way, does chess qualify as miniature game?
That's
that
a
is an
question.
sure. Maybe it's the original miniature game.
Mhm.
It's the original old games, I guess.
Yeah. It's a good point. I mean, it's essentially miniatures on a square grid, right? So, I mean, for all purposes, it probably could satisfy the definition of being the original miniatures game, or at least the oldest surviving miniatures game. Yeah. Cool. All right. So the last thing I was going to talk about with lifestyle gaming is the concept of what I call the hobby within the hobby. So the idea that gaming, I think, sometimes becomes so much a part of a person's life, and it certainly is this way for me, that playing the games anymore is not the only hobby. You start to develop other hobbies based around the fact that you're a gamer. And I'm just kind of highlighting a few of my own here. So these crappily painted things here were painted by me. So these are some steam cannons from the game Heavy Steam. Really cool idea for a game, really poorly executed, by the way. So this is a game where you basically have, now tell me if this doesn't sound like the coolest thing ever. It is steampunk mechs in battle. So just picture like mechs that are built out of like trains and stuff, like fighting each other like in an arena. Doesn't that sound amazing to you? Well, they totally blew that theme because the game is not that good. But I had to have it when I saw these steampunk, kind of mechs. And not only was it steampunk mechs, it's a Euro game. It's a resource management Euro game is the way the game works. Oh, and they screwed it up. But anyway, I decided to paint it because I didn't care about the game. So it's the first game I ever painted. So here are some steam cannons that I painted. And this is something that actually me and my girlfriend April do together sometimes. We'll just sit down and we'll each be painting like a different game and comparing. She's way better of a painter than I am. And I should actually show some of her work instead of mine.
Looks like it costs a lot of euros.
Good one.
You like that?
Yeah, good job, Matt.
This is probably my main hobby within a hobby that I'm involved in, which is just organizing and storing all the gaming crap that I own. So do you remember that game I talked about earlier called Dice Masters? I now own several thousand dice as a result of that game.
Is that all?
It's ridiculous. And I have them stuffed in like these Plano bins, and it's an absurdity. So
At least you have
just
it
picture
organized.
just picture what Matt was talking about with like the HeroClix miniatures, and picture that in dice form, and that is what my house looks like. So but I'll tell you what, I kind of love it. On BGG, the site Brian was talking about earlier today, there's a thing that people like to derisively call the cult of Plano. And some of us actually taken it as a badge of honor for people to like call us part of the cult of Plano. So what Plano is, it's these little plastic tackle boxes. And there's people in BGG, sadly enough, I'm one of them, who will argue about the best way to use these Plano boxes to store board game components. It's silly, but it's something that we're really interested in. So, and then finally, the last one here is I just put this one down here to show you. So this is how I made. So if you've seen this stuff that lines like the right side of the thing and like my title screen. So if you go back here to the first page, what's in the background there, I actually took that picture and because I wanted to have something that didn't have like a copyright associated with it. And I did that by just taking a bunch of my crap and mixing it in there. But anyway, I picked this just to kind of represent me being here. So like talking to people about games and kind of being almost like a board game evangelist in my life. Like I'm always talking to people about games and, I'm always trying to spread the idea of games. And then there's people who are way more serious about this, right? So you can go on YouTube, you can look at people, like Tom Vassell or whatever, the Dice Tower guys, people who do this really seriously as a part of their life and actually their career. They are basically, they're content creators. They're the board game media or the tabletop media. So, that's the hobby inside of the hobby, or, maybe the career inside of the hobby for some people. So anyway, I just wanted to open up the floor to hear if anybody else has any hobbies within the hobby. So things that they do that's a part of their gaming lifestyle that's not about playing games necessarily, but that is part of, the whole experience of being a gamer. Anybody have anything they want to add? Am I the only crazy person here?
Nope. I just don't want to show my crazy either.
So we'll go to Brian. We'll go to Brian first, and then maybe Vivian will become more comfortable.
Yeah, well, one thing about the space issue that I've learned by programming Vassal, you only have to make it once, and it's a virtual piece. You can copy it as many times as you want, and you don't have to worry about storage space. So that's the one good thing about playing games in virtual reality or at tabletop.
Absolutely.
Or at a board game, not board game keep. Never mind. But you get the idea. You only make it once, and you don't have to worry about storing it. That's my piece.
No, that's awesome, Brian. I totally agree with you. I mean, virtual games, it allows you to play more games without having to store more games.
Right.
So, Brian, you're intriguing me. So it sounds like you were heavily involved in Vassal. Have you ever tried Tabletop Simulator? Just, because it's like...
I logged in, and I went to the chess place, and I watched a couple people playing chess, and I could get into that real easy. Yeah.
So you have the app, or?
Yeah, it's
awesome.
Loaded.
You need to come play with us sometime then, because the cool thing is, like, in Tabletop Simulator, just like Vassal, only the host needs to have the game set up, and then people can like, log into that game. Right. That's awesome. I used to mess around a lot with Vassal back in the day, and Octagon. Do you know OTCGN?
No, I don't know that one.
OTCGN is similar to Vassal, but it's more targeted for collectible games. So like people play Magic and Dice Masters, and also some of the LCG, ECG stuff there. Anyway, sorry, this is a diversion. Anybody else have anything to say about the hobby within the hobby? We'll go to Vivian and then Matt. Yeah.
What? No. Oh, I mean, there's so many like sleeving,
Yeah.
But actually, it was funny. You were talking about like arguing about like your Plano boxes and stuff like that. Like if you go onto BGG, Board Game Geek, on their website or even on their Facebook page, like I enjoy reading all the different things that people discuss outside of actually playing the game.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of opinions, like which sleeves are the best, because how much space do you want it to take up, and which games travel best. For me, I'm always trying to get accessories that aren't like so stereotypically boyish. Like I have a really cool plexiglass dice tower that's like very pretty, so, and And what else? Like how you store the games? Like, should you store them horizontal or vertical? I mean, it's like so many funny like things that people discuss and like really get into. So that in itself is just fun to like watch the discussion about the Plano boxes and which one's the best, and or do you keep the original box or do you move it into a new box, or do you want to sleeve it? No, my cards need to be played. That kind of stuff. You can always just replace it, and no, some games you can't replace. And then of course the Kickstarter rabbit hole of doom and death and debt. So
that might be even worse than collectible games.
we should have a support group. Group here. But yeah, I mean, like all of it. Like I love like organizing my stuff too. Like just like the miniature, the dice, and then like how you store it, like zip bags and all that.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff. Yeah. It's fun to see how other people are really creative with how they choose to put things away. Or how do they use to play cards. Like I hate people who bend my cards. Like I don't know why you would bend other people's cards. So like they're just not gamers. So they just sit there and like flick the cards. So
it's one thing
I got
if it's
card
like
holders.
bicycles or something, like sure, whatever, if you have to bend my playing cards, but if you're gonna bend my originals for a game, you can go to hell.
Yeah, especially like an out-of-print game or something. But Vivian, you made me think of two things.
Yeah, Dad, don't bend my cards.
The first thing you made me think of was my favorite expression on BGG is when people start talking about sleeves. Someone will usually chime in and they'll be like, "Life short, why sleeve?"
Just sleeve, yes. Exactly.
So, and then the other thing you made me think of is the idea of, do you store the game in the original box or the expansion box? My answer is usually the smallest box, right? I put it in the smallest box I can fit it into. But then what really makes me shiver, like I just can't take it, is there's like this whole culture now on BGG of people reducing the size of their boxes. So they're actually cutting the boxes down, like, and repurposing them, and it's like, it just feels so icky to me to think about doing that. But
inserts.
Yeah, inserts. Yeah.
Or because I know it's like a really big topic to why is like such a small game in such a big box, like Splendor or Diamonds. It's kind of ridiculous. But of course, shelf presence, exactly. But yeah, you can like whittle it down to nothing, which is great for travel. And some people like to display their games. Or collect the boxes, but yeah, all the time.
Like Target, they need like shelf space is a premium. If you can fit 3 games in the size of this one, Target gets annoyed with that kind of stuff. Because remember, CDs used to be in those gigantic boxes, and then they slimmed them down
long
in
boxes.
the late 80s.
Yeah, those are worth money now, actually.
Yeah,
if you kept the long boxes, they are. Yeah, long boxes.
My Vanilla Ice long box is going to be worth something.
Oh my God, it is so worth everything. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was going to say something here.
Yeah, go Matt, please.
Do you think with like 3D printers, like people can invent a game and then like without like being able to mass produce the miniatures, you could just say, hey, if you've got a 3D printer, especially if they keep getting cheaper and cheaper, where it's like they'll be like, $50, $100, you can have it in your house, it'd be commonplace to have a 3D printer. Be like, oh, you can print off all these little miniatures and they'll look actually really nice, and you could, or print off your game board off of pieces of paper and glue it down and make a pretty decent game off of just a 3D printer and a regular printer.
You are describing every gamer's dream and workshop's greatest nightmare.
Oh yes, oh yeah. Well, 3D printers are a thing, and you can even like take a picture of yourself and import it and make your own miniature. Especially if you're talking like D&D, be like, like here, here's Matt. It's an actual picture of me, and my elven archer,
Yep. No, people do make their own custom miniatures already.
I'm sure they do. But I'm thinking commonplace, you'd see it everywhere.
Yeah. And actually, what you're describing is the most common scenario I've seen thus far. Is like one-off passion projects, right? Where someone wants to create exactly the miniature they want to represent their character in D&D. It'll be really interesting to see how they do that in the future, right? Like right now,
I've seen websites that do it, but they're expensive.
Like right now, when you buy into a Kickstarter, sometimes you'll get like a print and play version as part of your reward, right? Like
Right.
nobody ever does a print and play. I'm wondering if they'll also have like print and play miniatures as a part of those someday too. That would be pretty crazy.
Well, and I was thinking like instead of charging 20, 30, $50 for like a box, you know, you could just sell the rights to 3D print it for like $5 because like most of your production costs are in production, you know. It's like if you're building a board game and it costs you $20 to make each one, yeah, you got to sell it for 30, 40, 50, but you know, if you can design it and sell the rights to, you know, some kid to print it out, you can sell it for $4 or $5. You can make plenty of profit and not actually have to ship anything or make anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
maybe
I'm
someday.
seeing a lot of people who had their hand up before. Ghoster, I'll let you go first since you haven't talked in a while.
Yeah, I'm still alive. So what I wanted to talk about here was actually repurposing other games and videos for different purposes. So I hate to say this, but I have a big box of Legos. Like, I think I calculate it to like 1 million different pieces at this point.
That sounds awesome.
And currently I built a box out of Legos to hold Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I am also using Legos to support the base station so I can play in VR. I've used Legos to hold video game consoles and projectors, and just kind of the repurpose of some toy or game just being used in ways it wasn't normally intended for, but works very well. Such as, you know, these boxes that you have here. You know, they weren't meant to have hundreds and hundreds of dice stored in them, but you're using them to store hundreds and hundreds of dice.
Right. That's awesome. Like, I mean, so it's almost like it's like a game itself to be creative, right? To like figure out a way to, you know, store or use or maybe automate. Like I like when you look at people who make custom inserts, like what Vivian was talking about earlier. Like people make really fancy custom inserts that have like trays you can take out that basically make it as quick as possible to get the game to the table. It's really cool. But Ghoster, your story was making me think of something that I wanted to follow up on. So Star Wars Armada, there's another Star Wars game called X-Wing, which is probably even more popular than Armada. Some of you have probably heard of it. But I had a friend for a while when we were playing X-Wing. So some of us had X-Wing ships, and he was building copies of all the ships out of Legos, like really nice looking versions of the ships, like that were like almost identical to the ones we were playing with, but he had like the Lego version. And I thought that was awesome. So he had like a bunch of Lego X-Wings and Y-Wings and TIE fighters and stuff that were like all his design, and they looked really good. So anyway, you just made me think of a creative way to use Legos.
And you can also use Legos in many different types of games to replace certain components. Like, I know my friends were trying to get me into Warhammer 40K, and I was like, I don't want to have to go buy the sets, but can I, you know, make a pseudo army out of, you know, Legos, you know, vehicles, tanks, airplanes, use the little minifigs to represent people. And they're like, I mean, I guess, sure. I mean, as long as it's a normal army. So.
Very cool. Yeah, it's a similar idea. So Vivian, you still want to get back in because you were trying to earlier, but
Oh no, I was just commenting on, you know, the 3D printing because I've done a print and play when I was waiting for a game. Not really worth it. But it's I think that for 3D printing in this hobby will really just be for hobbyists. You know what I mean? Because I think that it's like the time that you put into this is like it's really truly your hobby to do these extra stuff, because a lot of people just want the game and not all the, like, they don't care to paint their miniatures, they just want to play the game. That's why I think games are like getting shorter too, like, because, you know, like people's attention spans, like they want to go do other things, they want to play the game, go and move on to another one, you know, stuff like that, you know.
no,
That is true. I mean, the 6-hour game of Axis and Allies, you know.
Yeah, no, because I was thinking like I get my war game fix from probably like Memoir 44.
Oh,
you know,
so anyway, that's what I skipped, Vivian. So let me go back to, that's my favorite war game. It's not Memoir 44, but I like the fantasy version of it. Called Battle Lore. It's Richard Borg's fantasy version of Memoir 44. And the reason I like it so much is you have spell cards that you can use in addition to just like the standard warfare. But I love that system, the
Yes.
command and colors system. It's a really cool light war game. Although maybe Brian wouldn't consider it, because Brian really seems like he really has a lot of wargaming experience. You may not consider it to be a war game, but to me, this is like the only wargaming I do. Something
Right.
a little bit later like that. So anyway, I think that's pretty much a wrap, unless anybody else has anything they want to add to the conversation. Matt, yeah, what you do?
I missed the beginning. So did you talk about like games like Hero Quest and all those, like and the Dragon Quest and all those?
We did not cover like dungeon crawl type games like that tonight. No.
Okay. That was like my family's favorite thing. Nobody wanted to play D&D, but if it was a board game, they were on board. No problem.
We will talk about that at a future event for sure.
Awesome.
So many
So-
topics.
We are
I know,
finally
I know.
done. We are finally done with the pillars of tabletop. If you guys are tired of hearing me talk about the pillars of tabletop, well, this is the end. We've gotten to through the series. Now we're going to start moving into more detailed topics, like what Matt's. So the two of the ones that have been suggested, I think, will be two of the first ones. So Brian's suggestion of abstract strategy games, I think we should start with that, because that's like the fundamental form of game, right? That's where games started. So let's talk about abstract strategy games, but I don't want to wait too long until we talk about dungeon crawl type games, because I love them. I especially like the Descent style games, but particularly Imperial Assault, because I'm a big Star Wars guy. So I'm looking forward to kind of chatting about that. But then we need to go back and talk about Hero Quest, and all the other cool kind of miniatures on a board, kind of questing together or questing competitively type game. All right, so that's it for the group discussion part. If there's nothing else, this is usually when we say goodbye to the stream, and I thank Ghoster for streaming to the Hive for us. And since she's here, I'll thank Vivian for putting together the Hive channel for all of us to put our content up on YouTube. We really appreciate it. I think it really adds a lot to our events. That's it. We'll say it's a wrap for number 7, Lifestyle Gaming. We'll have more of an informal chat, and we'll talk about whether we want to stay here and play games tonight or whether we want to go out into the tabletop simulator, because most of the people I'm seeing out there have tabletop simulator, so that might be in play tonight. So anyway, let me just so you can shut it down, Ghoster, whenever